Word of the day, Jubilee. Jubilee usually refers to a special anniversary or a celebration of such an anniversary. It can also refer generally to a season of celebration or act of rejoicing, or to a religious song of African Americans referring to a time of future happiness. Let's get into it. With that being said, that is a very, very poetic word of the day. Happy Juneteenth, everybody. Welcome back to Chopping Up with P. Scott. I'm Prescott Kelly. Today is Wednesday, June 19th. Glad to have you back with us. A lot of stuff on the docket today. If you are following us either on YouTube or the Facebook podcast stream, you can see Pickle Dr. Pepper, yes or no. The Jets continue to jet. Kamara issues in New Orleans. Daniel Jones got the bag. You know T. Law was going to as well. Dak to Miami. Is that real or not? Tiger Woods. He's on the cusp of that senior tour. Tatum ain't Kobe. Monty Williams fired. Like, share, subscribe. Smash those 5-star reviews. If you give us anything less than 5 stars, I'm just going to assume that you're a terrible person. If you missed yesterday, I wasn't on the microphone for my own personal show, but I was a guest on the Houston Sports State of the Union podcast with Nick Stevenson. If you don't follow them already, either on Facebook or any social media accounts or their other podcast platforms, they listen to mine, please do. You can search Nick Stevenson, or you can search Houston Sports State of the Union podcast, especially if you're a Houston fan. Also, big shout out to Mac Brooks of the Mac Truck Podcast, THEE. Paul Wizzo of Wizzo Talks. My dude Dolo J is back in the building on his Kicking the Dolo podcast as well. I also don't, I've already done, so I've done that, but I don't want to do too much of like the promo stuff early. I feel like people check out pretty early when you do that. We got bills to pay down the line. We got some new sponsors. If you've been listening the last couple of days, you know. If you don't, you don't. Also, before we get into anything, I have to say this. I don't know who stumbled upon my show, but huge shout out to you and whoever you told, because I woke up 2 days ago and the numbers for just this week, because I haven't done an episode for the entire 7-day period, right? I did one with JD's last Tuesday, but as far as new content in the last 7 days, I haven't had any. And somebody stumbled upon my show and apparently went back into a time vortex and started listening to all the other episodes I'd done. Probably told a couple people because the numbers went through the roof. So whoever stumbled upon the show and enjoyed it and shared it, always appreciate it. But yeah, like, share, subscribe. The audio version will be available down the line, probably tomorrow morning, because it's 8:15 right now. So I do have the original docket that I want to get into. If I see some comments in here, which Camden, I'm gonna get to you in a moment, my man. I will try to do my best to stay on track, but also listen and show my love to the people in the live feed. Camden says, I'm here for the Dak to Miami. To be honest, I figured that you would be, dog. Now, if you are here and you're watching live, a like, share, subscribe, all that good stuff would be greatly appreciated so we can keep growing this thing. We've seen a lot of good momentum over the past 2 or 3 months, which means that I'm obviously not being terrible at my job and you guys are doing your job and staying committed to me, and I appreciate that. Camden, if you can stay with me for 20, 30 minutes or check in every once in a while, I want to try to stay on point as much as I can. I know I'm asking a lot for a live audience, but this is what we're going to do. First of all, this is a really quick one, and Cam, you already dipped out, I think. So I've seen a lot of these things about these drink concoctions, and I want to get this out the way quick. It'll be very quick. I am somebody who I love Dr. Pepper, right? And I feel like that was passed down genetically because I feel like my mother has a slight Dr. Pepper addiction. And apparently you can just go to Sonic. It's not a thing that you can just, it's not on the menu, but you can ask them to put pickles in your Dr. Pepper. And I heard that it's really good. I haven't done it yet. I've seen this a couple times on the Tiki Talkies. I've seen people bring it up through Facebook as well, because that's the platform that I'm largely on. I feel like I'd like it. I don't know what you guys think. You can throw in the chat what your review would be, or if you've had it. I'm more interested if you've had it and what your overall analysis of it would be. But as somebody for me who loves Dr. Pepper and loves pickles, I don't see how this could miss, but maybe I'm just blinded by my own biases. Anyway, moving on. So the Jets continue to jet. They always do this. Usually, when it comes to me making fun of the New York Jets, it's because they're making some type of. Usually, what they're doing is it comes to quarterbacks, right? And they'll extend somebody when they shouldn't, or they're overpaying for somebody. Because like the whole Sam Darnold thing is like I felt like every single year they had Sam Darnold or Zach Wilson, it was like, well, they ended the season, like the last 4 or 5 games, they played really well. So we should probably give them another chance. And they kept burning themselves. And it's when you're out of playoff contention by week 8 and nobody's really trying anymore against you, yeah, you're going to look better than what you are. So people have been trying to cram the Zach Wilson or the Sam Darnold thing down our throat for the last 6 or 7 years now of, well, look at the momentum they'll have going into next season. This isn't that time, though. This isn't what this particular issue is about. It's about Aaron Rodgers, where now there might be some new developments because I haven't been so abreast of the situation where I know exactly what his plans are. But this is why I say the Jets are going to jet. Aaron Rodgers has been there for what? Now 2 off seasons. And he's kind of important. Like maybe not anymore now. It's like on the field production, maybe he's not as important as he used to be, right? And I think that we can, if you want to have that argument, you're more than within your right to, and you're probably right. But what is wild to me is nobody knew what this man was doing. So it shows one of a couple different things, right? It's either A, the Jets are just still incompetent, or the other thing is, nope, the Jets are just still incompetent. That has to be what it is. Like, I don't understand how you can have your quarterback who missed an entire year. Okay. It would be one thing if he'd been there for a couple years, because look, OTAs to me are largely ridiculous if you've been in the NFL for, if you make it to a second contract, that largely means that you're going to stick around for a bit, right? Because the average length of a career is about 4 years, 3 to 4. So if you make it to a second contract, that means you're probably going to stick around at least for 10, right? Usually, like somewhere in that ballpark. So for Aaron Rodgers to not be present at OTAs, to me, doesn't seem like it's a huge deal if he didn't get hurt 92 seconds in the last year. Maybe you want to kind of get familiar with your dudes. But for the fact that Robert Saleh and everybody who's affiliated with their front office is like, yeah, we don't know where he is. What do you mean you don't know where he is? You could have handled this so much better. You either A, and this is what I would have done. And I know this is difficult for people to understand because I don't own an NFL team. But one of the things I've been pretty consistent with in this space is whatever you do from day one, if you're the new coach, the new GM, it doesn't matter what your label is, but if you're the one helping making decisions, whatever you say day one needs to be what you do, who you are, and what you stand for. So if you're going to tell me that you're going to hold people accountable, because Robert Saleh has always been that guy, right? That's the persona that he has, is that he holds people accountable. He's a very direct, this is how things are going to be. Doesn't feel that way. Feels like Aaron Rodgers is still kind of running that joint. You would think that if he had these types of this elongated absence, that somebody would have known, because in press conferences, they're like, yeah, like he's just not going to be here for a bit. What? How is like this to me is mind-boggling because you should have known. And if he didn't tell you, why the hell are you guys still catering to this much? It's not Aaron Rodgers from 5 or 6 years ago. It's Aaron Rodgers at like 40 years old now, which is another topic because I'm tired of people thinking that these guys can just play at elite levels until they're 40 because Brady just wrecked the math. LeBron has wrecked the math, and everybody just thinks they can play. Kirk Cousins is still in the league and getting money because everybody just thinks you can do it because of how the rules and protections are and blah, 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 blah. Stop doing it. You should have had a better plan going into this. There's zero reason why nobody in that organization should not know, even if he doesn't want to tell you where he's going, at least say what you're doing. And there's some people in here like, well, he doesn't have to tell anybody anything. No, he doesn't. But if you're gonna do the whole sports thing of be the good team leader, be the good quarterback, the good soldier, then you got to do that though. This to me just feels like he's been so empowered over the past 3 to 4 years from certain demographics and also the name recognition. He knows he's awesome. He knows he's a future Hall of Famer. There's all these things that are kind of intertwined. But the Jets not knowing anything shows a lack of respect. And I hate doing this because we already have enough fake GMs out there on the interwebs. I'm not trying to say like he owes it to him, but it's also you'd think that if he respected them enough, he'd keep them in the loop of at least what is going on and for how long. Maybe he doesn't tell them location. Fine. But the Jets having zero answers is kind of another red flag of this team just has not figured anything out. Moving on. So shout out to Bobby Otten. He had asked me a couple days ago, and I've been really, Father's Day was Sunday, and then I had uh my day off yesterday. Had a really great day off with kiddo, and I didn't want to do my show, which I knew was going to take up an hour or so, and then be a guest on another podcast. Which again, shout out to Nick Stevenson, Houston Sports State Union podcast. I didn't want to have two shows back to back, so I figured wifey's at softball. She's got kiddo. I'll go ahead and do mine today, and it's totally fine. So Bobby Auden asked me to kind of dive into Alvin Kamara. He's a Saints fan. He lives in New Orleans, and this is kind of part of the mailbag situation is what does New Orleans do with Alvin Kamara? Because apparently he's sitting out. We'll get to the Cowboy situation a little bit later on because they have some real things to figure out is what should New Orleans do with Alvin Kamara? You can think that Alvin Kamara is an absolute stud. And the thing is, I know that he still is. I think he's not 30 yet, but he's pushing there. And I don't want to put this dumb label of once you hit 30, you're no longer relevant. You're no longer getting a bag because Christian McCaffrey's starting to kind of creep up there, and that dude just got paid. The thing for me is the eyeball test will tell me how much you are, I don't want to say worth, but how much you're valued, right? Like we've seen great running backs be behind terrible O lines and have terrible management. Barry Sanders is the ultimate. It is the ultimate word association with one of the greatest players we've ever seen with one of the worst run organizations ever, and still was awesome. I am not comparing Alvin Kamara to Barry Sanders. I need to be very clear about that. I need you guys to understand that. What I am saying, though, is I've seen a lot of bad stuff through that New Orleans organization, not to the extent of Detroit by any stretch of the imagination. But you've had the Michael Thomas thing. You've tried to rebrand after Drew Brees retired. Like you're trying all of these things, and New Orleans, to me, if they sign Kamara to another big deal, he's talented enough for me still that I would pay him, but not if I'm New Orleans. If I'm somebody else with a better O-line, if I'm somebody with a better quarterback, you have to understand where do you sit in the pecking order, right? And it's not that New Orleans is in necessarily a great division, because if you were in a really good division, I would say you just got get rid of him, because that he's not going to matter that much in a great division. But they live in a not good division, the NFC South, right? Carolina still cheeks. Atlanta, we think is going to be better, but we don't know. And then there's who's the other team? I'm missing somebody in the NFC South. Tampa. Okay, like none of those teams are. We don't consider them to be at the forefront of the NFC, right? So maybe you sign him because you think, hey, what if we luck into winning the division again? What if we can do that and then steal the a wild card game? Maybe, but when it comes to the actual financials of it, that you trying to trick fans into thinking that you're going to be good because you might potentially win one playoff game because you signed Kamara, to me doesn't make any sense. And it doesn't. It has zero to do with the fact that I don't think he's awesome, because I do think he's awesome. But your circumstance matters, and I don't trust what New Orleans is doing. From what I understand of the contract situation is like they could just completely cut bait with him. And I could have that wrong, but I believe that they could just cut him and everything's fine. I would still try to trade him because I believe that they still can. My biggest thing is, bro, you can't, if you were anybody in a position where, and I understand the whole like running backs don't matter, and we can sometimes overvalue them, and we get in that constant like cyclone of this guy's a difference maker. He does all these other things because again, Christian McCaffrey's in that same kind of boat where you can line him up in the slot or out wide, or you can run in between tackles. Like they are the offense to a degree. CMC was in Carolina. He was the offense. He's not so much in San Francisco anymore, but because they've had the offense has been so inept in New Orleans that they are continuing to like, well, we'll just give it to Kamara a bunch, or that's what we're going to try to do. Like Olave hasn't really developed into like the guy yet, but he's still young. If I'm New Orleans, you have to move on. You have to move on from Kamara, and I know that sucks because I know that he's good. I know that he's electric with the football in his hands, but you are always constantly having this counterbalance of, do we pay the guy that everybody knows is good versus when is it time to cut bait? And it's one of the reasons why Belichick was so good for so long. Not only did they maximize getting the best out of marginal players, he was not around with that whole they're a fan favorite thing. It was, you are on the way out in the next couple years. I'm not signing you to that lifetime achievement award, dog. Like that is not what I'm here to do. And that's another reason why they're so great. And that's another reason why I respect him so much in the capacity that he was in. But all these teams now want to pay players for past success, right? And that's one of the things that I've ridiculed Atlanta so hard with Matt Ryan, Pittsburgh with Ben Roethlisberger. There's more, but it's those types of contracts that get you in trouble because you're like, well, we can't lose them. You can, because they're not giving you anything. It's a marginal quarterback, old in their career, but you don't want to piss off the fans. And that's some of the dumbest thing I've ever heard. If you're New Orleans, I would suggest move on, trade him if you can, cut him. Like it's not worth the additional money. You have so many more holes. And yes, the NFC is absolutely more wide open than the AFC is, but you're so far away that if you think that Alvin Kamara is the reason why you can get further if you make him happy with cash, no, man, it's not going to work. And it's got nothing to do with me not liking Kamara because I think he's a stud. Plus, that grill is fire, by the way. Moving on. All right. So Trevor Lawrence is now one of the biggest, well, not one of the biggest stars. That's a wildly incorrect way of me saying that. But it's a bigger name now because of the contract situation of him getting his bag. And I talked about this with Nick Stevenson yesterday on his show was and this isn't like this isn't my take. I need to be completely transparent with that. We've seen enough of the memes and the gifs and everything where we've seen the stats between Daniel Jones and Trevor Lawrence, right? And they are eerily similar. And one is considered the golden child, the Fabio of quarterbacks, and one is considered sneaky athletic. But like, I to go off on a tangent, like this is the detour that I'm going to take real quick. Is I've made this comparison beforehand. Is that there is an eyeball test of what you look like, and I know that sounds very judgmental, and it kind of is to a degree. Of if you look like this, I don't see how you can be great. And Daniel Jones was that guy. Mac Jones was that dude. Zach Wilson was too pretty. Like there's always something where I'm like, if I see you in a screenshot, like in a video game, if I see you in a screenshot and I go, that guy is going to be awesome, usually it's right. And it's shallow, but most of the time I'm right with it. And Daniel Jones fit the description, didn't think he'd be good. Trevor Lawrence, by screenshot alone, that hair's too long for me, but that's more of a personal thing. But when Daniel Jones gets a bag, you know that Trevor Lawrence is going to get the exact same thing too, if not more. And that's the thing. He's the number one overall pick. We feel like we know him so well because he's been in our cerebral cortex for the last 8 years. It's crazy. This guy has spent 2 presidential terms living in our minds because we've known about him since high school. And he came on the scene in Clemson, beating the brakes off everybody, and he's the next generational talent. We thought he was supposed to be the next like Andrew Luck type of can't miss prospect, right? That's what we were all anointing him real quick. And he hasn't lived up to it. Now, there is a whole just absolute ton of turmoil that Jacksonville had early on, right? There was the Urban Meyer stuff, there was conditioning coaches, like there was he's had multiple coordinators. I understand why you don't want to give up on him so early. However, he hasn't been good. We've seen a couple of spikes, and I mean this because what we talked about earlier with like the whole Sam Darnold and Zach Wilson. Well, they looked good in week 14, 15, and 16. So you're going to pay him. He's only given you in real time, maybe what, 8 to 10 great games. And he's been in the league for what, 4 years now. It's not, to me, the money, and I know how the economics work. I don't agree with it because this is an issue. I see you, Jay. T-Laws, Danny Dimes. And yeah, and that was kind of the comment that I made right as we were getting into this transition was I understand why teams pay their quarterbacks because they can't lose them, right? But my argument has always been you can get the same production from near every quarterback. It's the circumstance that's different. There's one dude and there's one dude only that I am paying, and it's number 15, and he wears ketchup and mustard. That's it. Like I would pay him. Everybody else, if I know that I can get similar stats, why am I overpaying for you? But that's the nature of the beast. Fan favorites say that he got us here. We can't afford to lose him. I mean, you can. But Jay says, what's a quarterback? He's a Washington fan. So I get it. Man, I'm a Bills fan. I don't know what a quarterback is either. Womp womp. But anyway, so when it comes to Trevor Lawrence, like if Daniel Jones is going to get $40+ million a year, it is only logical that Trevor Lawrence would as well. Again, number one overall pick. You get a long leash. When you're the number one overall pick, you get a long leash. And it's one of the reasons why Baker Mayfield has still stayed along, even though he's shown when he was in Tampa, like again, it's the ups and downs, it's the ebbs and flows, but this dude is not, he shouldn't have been the number one overall quarterback or number one overall pick when he was. But same thing with Jared Goff. These guys aren't, but you also can't control your draft. Now, Goff, I kind of understand when he was selected. Baker was he was on no one's radar to be the number one overall pick. And then I woke up draft day and I saw on my phone Cleveland Browns eyeing Baker Mayfield's number one overall pick. And I was like, you got to be kidding me. Is this what we're doing right now? It ain't April 1. I see what you're trying to do, though, but I'm not falling for it. And he's still a number one. But when you have the number one overall pick and you are the number one overall pick, your leash is incredibly long. And you can get backup job after backup job and then potential starting job. And that's where these dudes are now. Goff isn't in that position because he's actually starting in Detroit. But I don't feel everybody's super high on Detroit, and they're really high on Jared Goff now. I done seen this movie before. You ain't gonna fool me. JD says Tim Tebow won a playoff game too. T-Law's a bum. Okay, so bro, I really don't want to hate you. I don't, because I don't hate you. I love you. But we're really doing the Tebow won a playoff game. We're still doing that. It's kind of like the whole Braun and MJ thing. We're still doing that. My timeline is 9,000 times a day. We're just doing that. Nah, man. You aren't going to get me. Last time we took a quarterback second overall, the fourth rounder was better. Oh, Washington with RG3 and Kirk Cousins. He wasn't better. He just didn't have dead legs. Anyway, I got to be... T-Law won 40% of his games. Bummy bum bum. Yo, that was... Jay, I got to move on to the next thing. So Camden was here early and said that he wanted to be here for the Dak to Miami. And I'm not sure if he's still with us. But this is the reason why I feel like there can be legs to it. No pun intended to it. Dak is on the precipice of getting one of these monster deals. It's going to be pretty stupid when you think about it, because he was able to, finesse might be the wrong word, but when you get $75 million in 1 year, man, you put in some work, bro. And Dak is kind of one of those guys where I feel like he gets a little bit too much, but that's just the quarterback position, right? Like that's just them in general. You know, you're going to get way too much love when your team is winning. We've seen that with like the aforementioned Tim Tebow. We saw it with him. We've seen it with Geno Smith. You could, etc. Like, go ahead and pick whatever quarterback from whatever franchise you want to. There's been a stretch where they're getting too much. I remember when Dak Prescott got injured and they're like, who's that other kid? His first name's Cooper. He should replace Dak. Nah, you're a backup quarterback for a reason. Let's not be stupid. But he's going to be in a position where he's going to make an absurd amount of money, because I'm always telling people, man, what is your backup plan? What do you have in place that's better than what you already have? And that's another reason, I guess, now that I'm talking this out loud, is that's part of the reason why some of these guys or these franchises pay these quarterbacks an absurd amount of money is, well, who are we going to get who's better? It's weird because every year the talent seems to get better. And this will never happen. So when I speak things out loud, it doesn't mean that I think they're going to happen. I'm just saying what I would do. I'm drafting a quarterback. If I got a first round draft pick and I'm not sure, I'm taking a quarterback every single year in the first round, every year. Because if I'm going to hit on one of them sooner or later, and it's not a practice, and I know that, and like nobody agrees with it, and I'm okay with it. But It is. It's Mahomes and it's everybody else. They're called generational talents for a reason. We've seen quarterbacks get taken high, fall, go to new teams, and then flourish. We've seen quarterbacks. Brock Purdy is a perfect example of last pick in the draft, goes to a banana squad with the Monstars on them, and all of a sudden now he's gonna be a top 5 paid quarterback, maybe, but he's been in MVP discussions. Circumstance matters. Why am I going to pay a dude whose stats are going to be relatively similar? Okay, now I know there's more to it between the ears between just stats. I get that. But statistically, these guys are all pretty interchangeable between where they get drafted and where they might potentially go. There's only a couple dudes who really move the needle and can change what is going on. Mahomes is that dude, and I haven't really seen much of anybody else. You can say Josh Allen, you can say Lamar Jackson, you can say Joe Burrow, you can say it, but if I'm going to dumb this thing down to what most folks want to do and go Rangs culture, it's Mahomes and nobody else. But to get back to Dak, though, is Dak is one of the better quarterbacks in the NFL. He gets an absolute lot of because he's star on the helmet, right? Because we're just going to do that. We're going to dumb it down to that, and that's it. You're the most popular. You play the most important position on the most important team and I say important because it's content-wise it is, and in the most important sport. You put all three of those things together, you got Dak Prescott, and bro, who is your backup plan? If you think it's going to be Cooper Rush, you can go ahead and do that, dog, but he's not. Don't be doing that. Dak is, I don't want to say that he's going to, I saw something funny the other day that there's a chance that CJ Stroud could hit an $80 million a year contract by the end of his rookie season, which I think is absurd. That can't happen. The economics of professional football won't allow for the acceleration of the salary cap to get to that point. And it's one season. He's not getting $80 million a year annually by the end of either next year or next year. That is either next year or the year after, excuse me. There is zero chance that he's getting $80 million a year after 2 years. Not happening. I also saw that there might be a salary cap for like the quarterback position. It could happen with enough pushback. I just don't see it happening. But with Dak, he's going to get one of these $55-60 million a year contracts because one, he's young enough. Two, he's been good enough. And who are you going to get who's better, dog? And I've seen these kind of suggested trades, right? We see them all the time. And the NBA is the worst, right? And to go off on a tangent real quick, it's like the NBA, like once it gets close to the trade deadline, we see just ridiculous, bonkers, Neanderthal type of hypothetical sports or hypothetical trades, right? And they're all asinine and none of them actually happen. But I've seen this a couple times with Dak to Miami, and I think it makes a little bit more sense than what people think it should. And it's mostly because I think that Miami is looking at this from the perspective of almost kind of how I am looking at it. Why would I pay another quarterback where I've got Tyreek Hill? Now, Tyreek Hill again. So this is the interesting part. You pay Jalen Waddle, and Tyreek Hill is only going to be Tyreek Hill, I believe. For you might get 2 crazy prime years of Tyreek again, but then Jalen's number 1. So how do you replenish that? So you got to keep drafting well. But the thing is, if you're going to allocate the money, let me ask y'all a question. Would y'all rather pay $60 million a year to Tua or $60 million a year to Dak? Now, the answer is neither. Spoiler alert. But if you're going to do it for one or the other, who is it going to be? If the money's going to be the exact same, I'd rather have Dak. That's just me, though. The only thing that would be interesting is like, that heat is bananas down in Florida. So I know that Texas is hot too, but they got the dome, the retractable roof, like they can open up things. There's a little bit. I don't want to overplay the weather too much, especially when it's nice. But bro, if it's 95, 100 degrees and you're in those pads, dog, that's gotta be just the worst scenario. And um, so Jay said I'd rather draft a rookie quarterback. That's my point though, is I'd rather recirculate it every, even if it's not gonna be every year. I know that that was hyperbolic in me saying every year I do it. But if I thought that the next year the rookie quarterback could be better than the rookie quarterback I already had, okay, then I'm going to draft one. If not, I'm waiting till the end of that rookie year and I'm going to draft another one. Like there's obviously a whole lot of caveats. There's a whole lot of moving parts and what's the draft class look like and blah 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 blah. There's all of those things. Understandable. But as a general rule, I'm not going to pay a quarterback $60 million. Like that's just me though. I know it's easy for me to say because I ain't got that money, but I know my principles, and I'm gonna tell y'all right now. Mm-mm. But if you're asking me, like, you're asking me to pick the lesser of two evils, essentially, even though they're both good guys and they've both had their downfalls, right? Tua's had this kind of stigma that he can't stay on the field. Partially true, especially early on. The last year and a half, that hasn't really been the case. Dak, on the other hand, has been largely healthy, but when he's had an injury, it has been a gruesome one. And it wasn't like, oh, I'm banged up. I'm kind of day to day. I'm going to miss a game. No, no. You were done, son. That leg was so the whole health thing has always kind of bugged me because like it's not a health thing, it's an injury thing. And I don't consider Dak to be injury prone. I'm starting to consider Joe Burrow to be injury prone though. I feel like that's a fair assessment of him. Um, but yeah, if you're throwing this hypothetical at me, I think it makes sense because if you're going to pay one dude, I think that Dak is more deserving than Tua. And especially with the weapons that they got there. And on top of the fact that Dallas, and I could have this wrong. I think Dak has 1 year left on his deal. I could be wrong. Please correct me if I'm wrong. But if you're trading him, when he's in like the first year of a 5 year deal, that's a whole lot of dead cap money, and you don't want to be a part of that. But if it's the last year of his deal, you might as well trade him and then draft another quarterback. And because you're going to have to owe money to CeeDee Lamb, you have to owe money to Michael Parsons. Like these dudes are going to want to get paid. And there is zero chance that you hold on to Dak, pay Micah, and pay CD and expect to have a functioning football team. That is not going to happen at all. I'm going to go ahead and go through a couple of these things in the chat real quick. Chris writes in the building. He said, Alaska's cold. It's not right now, bro. It's like 80 degrees in the Caribbean cities with the hot mommies screaming, "I poppy." And then Chris said, wait, how you gonna ask a question, then answer it for us? Look, man, I'm a river to my people. I get it done right. Jay says, pay the linemen. QBs don't need it. There's a yes and a no to that. I think that the guy, Mr. Mahomey, that guy needs to get paid. He's the only one, though, to me. And I catch a lot of heat because what about Burrow and Allen and Jackson and Herbert and all these other guys? That's cool, man. That's cool. But I'd rather have a better football team because we've seen, and I know that like I'm kind of talking out both sides of my mouth when I do this of, well, just be great on like not even like one side of the ball, but we've seen with Jacksonville, right? Jacksonville paid Blake Bortles, and that is my prime example. I love using Blake Bortles as the example of you had a generationally great defense for it was 1 year. Fine. I'll concede to that. It was 1 year. Be a great running game, great defense. Well, we need to pay Blake Bortles because he got us to an AFC championship game. No, you got there because of that run defense or just the defense in general and your run game. And you had to hide Blake Bortles in the AFC championship game when you were up double digits against the Patriots and you still paid him. That is always my point is I'd rather pay the lineman. I'd rather pay my skill position guys because all the quarterbacks are kind of interchangeable depending on what the circumstances. Why don't I just create the best circumstance? We gonna pay some bills real quick. Oh, I did the coin one and not the fair thing. So I finally got my not finally because that makes it sound like I've been waiting forever. But I know in my streams of the past week or so, I've had the W energy drink and hydration part of my new sponsorship, right? So www.wdubby.gg.com, or there's not even .com at the end of it. But I finally got mine, watermelon and pineberry. My wife loves the pineberry. I tried the watermelon. That thing was fire. Use promo code PSCOTT, PSCOTT, on your online purchase to receive 10% off of your off your purchase. Once again, PSCOTT at www.dubby.gg. Where are we on my timeline? Y'all had me shook because I had something planned for this, and y'all just making me weird. All right, let me do this real quick. I gotta rehydrate, man. I'm parched. Talking for 40 minutes straight is a full time job. So I went over back to Miami. Oh, Tiger Woods. Let's move on to Tiger Woods. And the reason why I'm bringing this up specifically is because I don't like to call people out when they say dumb, but if you're going to say dumb, I'm sometimes going to use it as content. But again, if you say those things, I'm not going to call you up by name, but I'm going to use what you're trying to push down our throat as a narrative. So Tiger Woods is really close. I think it's like a year and a half away from being able to be eligible for the senior tour. And I saw on my socials that somebody had said that he's going to get back to old Tiger form because he's going to be able to use the carts, which he said that he would use, and be playing against other old golfers. And I'm looking at this from the perspective of this guy can't finish tournaments. Last time I checked, there's still golf courses. They're not making him run on, par threes all the time. Having the golf cart, yeah, it'll be a little bit easier on his back. Fine. A little bit easier on the legs. Fine. But if you can't finish a tournament, how are you also going to tell me that he's going to be competitive and get back to old Tiger? That Tiger is gone. He's cooked. You know, sure, he might get into the space where he wins, a major in the seniors. He wins a tournament. Sure, maybe that happens. But there is zero chance on God's green earth that Tiger Woods, after everything that he's been through between the surgeries, the surgeries, and the more surgeries, is going to go back to prime Tiger. We do this all the time. Well, I don't. And when I say we, y'all know what I'm talking about. When I say y'all, want to hold on to the legacy of what you remember somebody as, not what they are currently. And nobody likes to do that. Nobody wants to move on from that. I remember this guy. This guy was the reason why I got into golf. This is the reason why I follow whatever the case might be. You have a reason why you have an affinity in this specific instance that you have it for Tiger Woods. And you think that Tiger's always going to be Tiger. Nah, man, that man's Earl now. He's Earl now. He's not Tiger. To think that this man can just go back in time because and that's the other part of this comparison that I find odd is he's not going to go back to prime Tiger. He's just playing against other old dudes. That's all it is. Like he doesn't get to go back into a time machine, into a space-time continuum, go back and be able to be like 2002 Tiger Woods. That is not how that happens. He's just going to play against worse competition because, spoiler alert, he's worse now. It's not that I wish ill on him. I would love to see prime Tiger again. But it's not going to happen just because he's going to be rocking around in a cart and just because he's playing against other old dudes does not mean that he's going to suddenly dominate a sport that he can't even finish cuts. I haven't been that defiant. Like I'm usually a dude who's like, well, I can see this happening, but only if this. I don't think I've had that strong of a take on anything in my entire life. And it was golf. Moving on. So the other day we were talking about Jason Tatum and Kobe Bryant, and I didn't catch heat for it, but I feel like people misunderstood what I was trying to convey. And to be completely honest, that's on me because my brain is one of one. I look at things completely different than any other sports fan you've ever met. I mean, I like to think I'm that special. I'm probably not. But when I'm looking at, I had posted, are we going to give Jason Tatum the same treatment that we did Kevin Durant when he joined the Warriors? And this got simplified to, well, no, KD joined the Warriors. Jason Tatum was actually drafted by the Celtics, which, again, fair point. Both statements are accurate. Not what I was going for. And when I portrayed what I was going for, nothing. It was all just people just still layering on. Tatum was drafted and KD signed there. My point was the serpentine of Jason Tatum's career has actually been pretty fascinating when you think about it. He's the number 3 overall pick. He starts to get dubbed as like the next superstar. But in this season, people started to say, well, he's not a superstar. Well, you just said he was. And by you, I mean you. The collective social media you was saying he's a superstar. And I'm over here going, he's not. But because he did one thing to attach him to greatness, and it was, I texted Kobe. That right there elevated and catapulted him into, well, I mean, if Kobe signed off on it, he must be. But he was shrinking in the playoffs, and we went from the Boston series were so wild to me, where it was they got bailed out. Mavs in 5, Mavs in 6. And then they win the championship, which is exactly what I told you would happen. Boston's going to win this series. And when they do, nobody's going to care. All of those stigmas, all of those narratives, everything out the window. And that's exactly what happened. Now, he's catching some heat still because he's supposed to be the best player on the best team, which means you're supposed to win NBA Finals MVP. And he didn't. When he said that he was, I texted Kobe, like him and I like this, I got that Mamba mentality. We were seeing this, and I don't think I'm inaccurate on this. If you follow sports enough, and especially the NBA, and especially through like the social media, like all the weeds you got to go through, enough people were saying he's the next Kobe, not because of play style, but because of mentality. Because Kobe, he had that DNA in him, right? He had that Mamba mentality, and it wasn't it. And the point that I was trying to make, and I went off on another detour, is that I said, you can't tell me that he's supposed to be Kobe. Because with Kobe, it was always, okay, well, there was the Kobe and Shaq years, right? Where they were dominant. And we all recognize that. And you'd be a fool to not recognize that. They were dominant. Those two together with the roster they had and the coaching, that was a juggernaut. But the way I was coming at it that nobody seemed to pick up on was, if he's Kobe, then he shouldn't need to have Jaylen Brown. Now, Jaylen Brown's getting paid more money than him because he got drafted a year beforehand. The contracts is like, that's just how that happens. So I can't fault him for Jaylen Brown getting paid more money, because Tatum's going to get paid more than him, because that's just how the economics of sports work, whether I agree with it or not. It's going to happen. But my whole point was, well, you have to go get Drew Holiday. I mean, if you're that good, if you're Kobe, if you're supposed to be the second coming of Kobe by the mentality and everything, you don't need a Drew Holiday. Carry the Celtics team that you have. You don't need Kristaps. What are you talking about? Like you're like you're the dude. I've been told that you're the dude. You're the dude. We don't need Derek White. Oh, wait. So you mean that we needed the best? And I've said this before, and this I have caught heat for, of saying this Boston Celtics starting five was the best starting five in NBA history. I caught some heat. And I'm not saying that they have the best player. I'm not comparing Jason Tatum to Kobe or LeBron or MJ or whatever, insert whatever name you want to. I'm not comparing Jason Tatum to any of those dudes. But that starting five of Drew Holiday, Jaylen Brown, Jason Tatum, Kristaps Porzingis, and Derek White, that is bananas, especially when you think about how they play. And every series, I try to be as open-minded as I can. I try to give you guys my expert analysis without even watching games. When Minnesota was playing Denver, so they match up better. They match up better against Denver because Denver doesn't have like elite shot creators. They just don't. They've got Jokic who runs their stuff, Jamal Murray to a degree. I mean, I know he's great, but once it got to Minnesota is going to play Dallas, that is where I said Dallas is going to have the advantage because, yes, Minnesota has the length. They have great defenders, but it's Gobert and it's Towns. 40% of your starting five, if you get a switch with Kyrie or Luka, you are toast. And that's why I thought Dallas would win that series. And they did. And when it came to this series, when it came with Boston, that was not going to be the case. And it wasn't because 1 through 5, those dudes can basically play against every other position that you have. At least it's not going to be so detrimental where you have a weakness, right? Or a glaring one, I guess I should say. Because, yeah, if you have Kyrie on Porzingis and it's one-on-one, yeah, I kind of trust I'm leaning team Kyrie. Well, whoever has the ball, because Porzingis is 9'12" and can shoot over Kyrie, and then Kyrie has the best handles that I've probably ever seen. He can get by him. But that in a 5-on-5 scenario, Dallas, it's two dudes manufacturing all of your offense. Where also with Boston, you've got Drew and White and Jaylen and Jason who can all create their own shot. This was going to be a boat race from the get-go. The fact that the Mavs got one is just one of those. It's so stereotypical of you're down 3-0, you let your guard down, you want to let Porzingis have another day. Like it was so obvious. And not from the perspective of the NBA needs it for ratings. That is not what this is about. It's just the very typical letdown game when you're up 3-0, you know you're the better team. You'd rather win on your home court anyways, which I know sounds stupid because why risk losing it at all? Nah. Boston was going to wax that. It was not, without trying to be the hyperbolic guy and say there was never a doubt, there really wasn't a doubt about this series. And it's so funny. Again, the game to game is so bananas to me because after game 4 in Dallas, not even just Molly, but Percocet and Molly whopped the absolute hell out of Boston. It was, oh, here we go. Joe Mazzulla, these young Celtics, they're going to lose the series or watch. It's going to go to 7. Nah, man, that wasn't what it was. It's wild to me that after like every single game, we have to overreact. And they say, well, if you lost it by 50,000 points in game 4, who are we to say that you're going to be able to tune it back in? It's why it's not a best of 1. Because if it was a best of 1, if it was the Super Bowl, if it was a 1-game sample size, we wouldn't even be talking about this because Boston won game one. So what's that? What's even the point? That isn't what it was, though. They got smacked. I don't think they really cared. They made it pretty obvious that they don't care. Now, I will say this before going into the series, I felt that Boston was going to win this series because they had absolutely the better roster top to bottom, hands down. You cannot dispute that. But what I was worried about was the Mazzulla effect. That's what I was worried about. He was going to just do what Joe Mazzulla does and call weird timeouts, or wasn't going to give up on rotations when he should, or something like that. Or that Boston might just, they might poop the bed every once in a while because, they're young. That's what they do. They squander leads. Like those things are still part of the equation with them. But losing one or two games that's not losing this series. It's not losing a championship. Because if it was a 1-game sample size, we would have been done after game one and moved on out. But Boston won. Tatum's going to get his money, but he ain't Kobe. And y'all need to stop that, because if he was, he wouldn't have needed the best starting five to ever grace God's green court, especially in the TD Garden. With that being said, y'all know the drill. You can find the audio version wherever you get your podcasting. Like, share, subscribe, smash the 5-star reviews. Stay up, stay blessed. We'll catch you guys on the next one.